I am Jessica, 27 years old, and for 5 years I paid my parents' mortgage while building my career. I sacrificed my own dreams to keep them afloat after Dad lost his business. I never complained, just quietly transferred the money each month. But last spring, when I finally prioritized my own future with my boyfriend Tyler, they exploded. "You are ungrateful," they screamed. "Get out and never come back." So I did. 3 months later, Dad texted, "Why have you not paid the mortgage?" Before I tell you how I responded to my dad's shocking text, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like button if you have ever felt unappreciated by Thad. Family. Growing up, we were your typical middle-class family in suburban Pennsylvania. My father, Robert, worked as a regional manager for a manufacturing company, and my mother, Barbara, was a part-time receptionist at a dental office. We were not wealthy, but we had enough for a comfortable life in our modest 4-bedroom house. Everything changed when I turned 12. The company my father worked for downsized, and he was among the first to be let go. The financial strain was immediate and intense. My mother took on 2 additional jobs as a waitress and weekend retail clerk. I still remember the dark circles under her eyes as she rushed from one job to another. Meanwhile, my father struggled to find comparable employment. His pride took a massive hit, and he became increasingly bitter about his circumstances. My younger brother Michael was only 8 at the time. Being 4 years younger than me, he was somewhat sheltered from the worst of the family stress. My parents made sure his life remained as normal as possible. He continued his sports activities and got new clothes whenever needed. I understood why they protected him, but it established a pattern that would continue into our adulthood. I threw myself into academics, recognizing early that education might be my ticket to stability. While my parents were occupied with their financial struggles and Michael's childhood, I quietly maintained straight, as joined every academic club possible and spent weekends studying instead of socializing. By senior year, my efforts paid off when I received a substantial scholarship to State University. College was challenging but rewarding. I majored in marketing with a minor in business administration, graduating summa cum laude. My parents attended my graduation ceremony, but their praise was tepid at best. Dad briefly mentioned being proud before steering the conversation to Michael's baseball tournament. Mom simply said, "Now you can get a good job and help out around here." And I did get a good job, landing a position at Patterson Marketing Associates, one of the most prestigious firms in Philadelphia. The starting salary was impressive for a new graduate, and I felt a mixture of pride and relief. Finally, I could stand on my own 2 feet and maybe help ease my parents' financial burden. By this point, their financial situation had worsened considerably. Dad had started a small construction supply business that struggled from day one. They had refinanced the house multiple times, and the mortgage payments had ballooned. When I discovered they were 3 months behind on payments and facing potential foreclosure, I stepped in without hesitation. "I will cover the mortgage payments until you get back on your feet," I told them during Sunday dinner, sliding over a check for the overdue amount. My mother accepted it with a terse, "It is about time you contributed," while my father mumbled something about paying me back someday. There was no gratitude, just an unspoken expectation that this was somehow my obligation. What was supposed to be a temporary arrangement stretched into years. Every month I transferred $1,800 to their account for the mortgage payment. This meant significant sacrifices on my part. Instead of renting a nice apartment near my office, I shared a cramped 2-bedroom place with 2 roommates in a less desirable neighborhood. I drove an old car with over 150,000 miles on it. Vacations were non-existent, and I bought clothes from discount stores while my friends shopped at boutiques. Meanwhile, Michael dropped out of community college after 1 semester, declaring it not his thing. My parents never pressured him to return or find full-time employment. He picked up occasional work as a bartender, but spent most of his time playing video games in our parents' basement. Whenever I gently suggested he contribute to the household expenses, my mother would jump to his defense. He is still finding himself, she would say. Not everyone can be a workaholic like you, Jessica. That stung. I was not a workaholic by choice, but by necessity. I was supporting not only myself, but also subsidizing my parents' lifestyle. Yet in their eyes, Michael's lack of direction was somehow more acceptable than my dedicated work ethic. Despite these frustrations, I continued to help them. Each month, the money left my account like clockwork. I never missed a payment, even when I had unexpected expenses of my own. I told myself I was being a good daughter, that family takes care of family. But deep down, a resentment was building that I could not fully acknowledge even to myself. 5 years into my career at Patterson Marketing, my hard work finally paid off with a significant promotion to senior account manager. This came with a considerable salary bump, but also increased responsibilities and travel requirements. I was ecstatic about the recognition and new opportunities, but my parents seemed more concerned about how my new schedule would affect them. "So does this mean you will be around less?" my mother asked when I shared my good news over dinner. "Your father needs help with the business paperwork on weekends." I had been handling my father's bookkeeping for years, as an unpaid favor, spending most Sundays sorting through his disorganized receipts and invoices. The prospect of reducing this commitment due to work travel seemed to overshadow my professional achievement entirely. "I can help when I am in town," I offered, "but I might need to hire a part-time bookkeeper for Dad's business with my new schedule." "We cannot afford a bookkeeper," my father scoffed. "That is why we have you." The statement hit me like a punch to the gut. Not "we are proud of you" or "congratulations on your hard work." Just a reminder that my primary value to them was as free labor. The increased travel brought another unexpected benefit: distance from the constant demands of my family. On business trips to Chicago, Atlanta, and New York, I experienced brief periods of freedom from family obligations. Hotel rooms became sanctuaries where no one needed anything from me. I began to realize how tense and anxious I normally felt around my parents, as those feelings dissipated when I was away. This newfound awareness led me to seek therapy. Dr. Marshall, a compassionate woman in her 50s, helped me recognize the unhealthy dynamics that had developed in my family. "It sounds like you have become the parent in this relationship," she observed during our third session. "You are financially supporting your parents while receiving little emotional support in return." These sessions became my lifeline, a space where I could voice frustrations I had buried for years. Dr. Marshall encouraged me to set boundaries, a concept that was entirely foreign to me when it came to my family. Around this time, I met Tyler Wilson at a marketing conference in Boston. He was a software engineer with kind eyes and an easy laugh. We bonded over our shared love of true crime podcasts and spicy food. Unlike previous dates who lost interest when they learned about my family commitments, Tyler listened with genuine empathy when I explained my situation. "You are incredibly loyal," he said, "but do not forget to be loyal to yourself too." Our relationship progressed naturally and joyfully. For the first time, I experienced what it felt like to be with someone who celebrated my successes and supported me through challenges without keeping score. Tyler showed me what healthy love looked like, and it made the transactional nature of my family relationships even more apparent by contrast. When I introduced Tyler to my parents over dinner at their house, their reaction was lukewarm at best. My mother asked pointed questions about his family background, seeming disappointed to learn his father was a plumber and his mother a school cafeteria worker. My father barely engaged, offering only curt responses when directly addressed. "He seems nice enough," my mother said afterward, "but do not. You think you could find someone more established, someone who could really help you get ahead?" Her implication was clear. Tyler's value was measured by what he could provide materially, just as mine had been. "Tyler makes me happy," I replied firmly. "That is what matters to me." This small act of standing up for myself and Tyler marked the beginning of a change in me. With Dr. Marshall's guidance and Tyler's support, I began setting modest boundaries. I reduced my Sunday bookkeeping sessions to twice monthly. I stopped answering every panicked phone call from my mother about minor household issues. I declined to loan my father $5,000 for yet another business idea that would surely fail like the others. Each boundary was met with resistance, guilt trips, and passive-aggressive comments. My mother became especially skilled at making me feel selfish for having any life outside of helping them. "I guess your new boyfriend and fancy job are more important than your family now," she would say, when I could not immediately drop everything to help them. The tension peaked when my brother Michael announced he wanted to try college again, his third attempt. My parents automatically looked to me to cover his tuition and expenses. "Your brother deserves another chance," my father said. "Education is important." The irony that they had barely acknowledged my own educational achievements was not lost on me. For the first time, I flatly refused. "I am already paying your mortgage," I stated calmly. "I cannot afford tuition on top of that." Michael is 23 now. He can apply for financial aid or work part-time like I did. My parents were shocked by my refusal. In their eyes, I had broken an unspoken family contract. I was the provider, the responsible one who fixed everyone's problems. By saying no, I had disrupted the entire family system. The cold shoulder treatment lasted for weeks afterward, with minimal communication beyond necessary logistics about the mortgage payment. Despite the discomfort, standing my ground felt surprisingly empowering. Each small boundary was a reclamation of my own life, a statement that I mattered too. These incremental changes were building toward a confrontation that none of us could have anticipated. By spring, Tyler and I had been dating for nearly 8 months. Our relationship had deepened to the point where we were discussing a future together, including the possibility of buying a home. After much discussion, I decided it was time for a proper introduction between Tyler and my parents, hoping that a formal dinner might help them see how important he was to me. I spent hours preparing for Sunday dinner, coaching Tyler on potential topics to discuss with my father, and warning him about my mother's tendency to ask invasive questions. Tyler, ever supportive, assured me that he could handle it. "They are important to you, so they are important to me," he said, squeezing my hand as we pulled into my parents' driveway. The modest 2-story house where I grew up looked the same as always, though the paint was peeling in places and the front garden my mother once tended with care had become overrun with weeds. These small signs of neglect reflected the general decline I had noticed in my parents' self-sufficiency over the years. My mother opened the door with a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. She was dressed more formally than usual for a family dinner, perhaps, to impress upon Tyler the social standing she believed our family maintained. "Welcome," she said stiffly, accepting the bouquet of flowers Tyler had brought with a cursory thank you, before placing them on the side table, not even bothering to put them in water. My father was in his recliner watching golf, barely looking up when we entered the living room. He eventually stood to shake Tyler's hand with minimal enthusiasm before immediately turning the conversation to a problem with his business truck. "The transmission is going," he informed me, completely ignoring Tyler, "going to cost at least $2,000 to fix." The implication hung in the air, an unspoken request for financial assistance that had become all too familiar. I deliberately changed the subject, steering the conversation toward neutral topics as we moved to the dining room. Dinner was my mother's pot roast, which she pointedly mentioned was Tyler's lucky day since she usually makes Jessica's favorite chicken dish on Sundays. Another subtle dig establishing that Tyler was disrupting normal family patterns. The tension around the table was palpable as we began eating. My mother dominated the conversation with a detailed account of cousin Diane's daughter's wedding, emphasizing the expense and grandeur of the event. I recognized it as her way of communicating our family's supposed social status. Eventually, she turned her attention to Tyler. "So Jessica mentioned you work with computers." "Yes, I am a software engineer for MedTech Solutions," Tyler replied politely. We develop applications for healthcare providers. Is there much security in that? My father interjected. Seems like all those tech jobs end up overseas eventually. Before Tyler could respond, my mother added, and what about advancement? Jessica is on a very promising career track. The interrogation continued through the main course with questions about Tyler's savings, his 5-year plan, and even whether his company offered good health insurance. Tyler handled each question with grace and honesty, though I could see his discomfort growing. During a brief lull in the conversation, I decided to share our exciting news, hoping it might shift the dynamic. Tyler and I have been talking about buying a house together, I announced, reaching for his hand across the table. We have started looking at neighborhoods and meeting with mortgage lenders. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother set down her fork with deliberate slowness while my father's face darkened. A house, my mother finally said. That is a significant commitment for someone you have known less than a year. We are not rushing into anything, I assured her. We are just starting the process. And where exactly would this house be? My father asked, his voice unnaturally controlled. We have been looking at properties in Riverside, Tyler replied. It is a great area with good schools for the future, and the commute works for both of us. Riverside, my father's voice rose. That is 40 minutes away. The distance is not that bad, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I would still come visit regularly. Visit? My mother practically spat the word. So you are really doing this? Abandoning your family when we need you most? I was genuinely confused by her reaction. Mom, buying a house is not abandoning you. It is a normal adult step. There is nothing normal about turning your back on family, she retorted. After everything we have done for you. The absurdity of her statement made something snap inside me. 5 years of suppressed frustration suddenly found its voice. Everything you have done for me, I repeated incredulously. I have been paying your mortgage for 5 years. I have been doing Dad's bookkeeping for free. I have put my own life on hold to keep you both afloat. My father slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. We gave you life. We raised you. And this is how you repay us, by throwing money in our faces. That is not what I meant, I backpedaled, stunned by the escalation. I just meant that I have been trying to help the family too. By moving away, by choosing this stranger over your own blood. My mother gestured dismissively toward Tyler. Tyler cleared his throat uncomfortably. I think there is a misunderstanding. Jessica has nothing but love and respect for you both. She talks about you all the time. Stay out of this, my father snapped at him before turning back to me. You have changed, Jessica. Ever since you got this promotion, ever since you met him, you have become selfish. Your brother needed tuition money, and you refused. Now you want to move away when you know we depend on you. Depend on me for what? I asked, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. The mortgage. Because I can still pay that while living in Riverside. It is not just about money, my mother said, though her tone suggested otherwise. It is about family loyalty. About being there when we need you. I have been there, I insisted. For 5 years I have been there for everything you have asked. But I need to have my own life too. My father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His face had turned an alarming shade of red. Your own life. What about our lives? What about everything we sacrificed for you? And this is how you thank us. By abandoning us for some programmer. Robert, my mother cautioned, glancing nervously at Tyler. But my father was too far gone in his rage. No, Barbara, she needs to hear this. You are ungrateful, Jessica. After everything we have done, this is how you repay us. I stood up too, my whole body trembling. Dad, please, let us just calm down and talk about this rationally. I am perfectly rational, he shouted. And I am telling you that if you choose this path, if you choose him and this house over your family obligations, then you are no daughter of mine." The room fell silent. I stared at my father in disbelief, waiting for him to retract the statement. He did not. "Robert," my mother whispered, but there was no real objection in her tone. "You heard me." My father continued, his voice slightly lower but no less venomous. "You are ungrateful. Get out and never come back." I looked to my mother, hoping for some intervention, some acknowledgement that this had gone too far. Instead, she offered the final blow. "If you walk out that door now, you are no longer our daughter," she said coldly. "Make your choice, Jessica." Tyler stood and gently took my elbow. "I think we should go," he said quietly. "This conversation can continue when everyone is calmer." Tears blurred my vision as I allowed Tyler to guide me toward the door. Neither of my parents moved to stop us. As we stepped outside, I heard my father's parting shot. "Do not bother coming back unless you are ready to be a real daughter again." The drive home passed in a fog of shock and hurt. Tyler kept one hand on mine while navigating the darkening streets, occasionally murmuring reassurances that I barely registered. All I could hear was my father's voice. "Ungrateful. Get out. Never come back." And my mother's silent complicity in my excommunication from the family. By the time we reached my apartment, the numbness had begun to give way to a pain so acute it felt physical, like something vital had been torn from my chest. Tyler helped me inside, and only then, in the safety of my own space, did I finally break down completely. The first week after the blowout with my parents passed in a blur of tears and disbelief. I called in sick to work for 3 days, something I had never done before, even with legitimate illnesses. My body felt heavy, as though grief had physical weight. Tyler stayed with me, working remotely from my apartment and gently encouraging me to eat when I had no appetite. "They did not mean it," I kept telling myself and Tyler. "They were just angry. They will call tomorrow to apologize." But no call came. No text message, no email. The silence was deafening and definitive. By day 4, I forced myself back to work, throwing myself into projects with an intensity that concerned even my workaholic colleagues. Work had always been my refuge, the place where I felt competent and valued. Now it became my lifeline to normalcy. My closest friends, Sarah and Kimberly, rallied around me when they learned what had happened. They showed up at my apartment on Friday night with wine, comfort food, and unwavering support. "I cannot believe they would say those things to you," Sarah fumed as she poured generous glasses of Cabernet, "after everything you have done for them." Kimberly, always the more pragmatic one, focused on practical matters. "Have you stopped the mortgage payments yet? You should, you know. They literally told you to get out of their lives." I had not stopped the payments. Some part of me still believed this was a temporary rift, that surely my parents would not actually want to lose both their daughter and their financial support. The automatic transfer was scheduled for the following week, and I had been avoiding making a decision about it. "I do not know what to do," I admitted, swirling the wine in my glass without drinking it. "If I stop paying, they could lose the house." "That is not your responsibility," Kimberly insisted. "They made their choice when they kicked you out." Her words echoed in my mind that night as I lay awake. Had they really made their choice? Or was this just an emotional outburst that had spiraled out of control? The uncertainty tormented me. Tyler, ever patient and supportive, suggested we accelerate our house hunting as a positive distraction. The following weekend, he picked me up early and had a full day of viewings scheduled with a realtor named Dorothy. "No pressure to make any decisions," he assured me. "Just looking to see what is out there." Dorothy was a cheerful woman in her 60s who seemed to intuitively understand my fragile emotional state. She kept the conversation light as she showed us through various properties, highlighting features but never pushing for reactions. The fourth house we visited was a charming colonial in a quiet riverside neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths with a sunlit kitchen and a backyard oak tree, perfect for a future swing. As we walked through the rooms, I could envision a life there, dinner parties with friends, a home office for remote work days, maybe even children someday. "What do you think?" Tyler asked, his eyes hopeful as we stood in the empty living room. For the first time since the disastrous dinner, I felt a spark of something positive. "I love it," I admitted. "It feels like a home where good things could happen." That evening, after serious discussion about finances and timing, we decided to make an offer. The act of signing those papers felt significant, a declaration that I was choosing my future despite my parents' rejection. As the mortgage transfer date approached, I finally made the difficult decision to cancel it. My therapist, Dr. Marshall, had been gently nudging me toward this conclusion for days. "Continuing to pay enables the unhealthy dynamic," she explained during our emergency session. "They need to experience the natural consequences of pushing you away." Still, my finger hovered over the cancel recurring payment button for nearly 10 minutes before I finally clicked it. The finality of that simple action brought fresh tears, but also a strange sense of liberation. That night, I wrote a long email to my parents explaining my decision, expressing my hurt at their words, and leaving the door open for reconciliation if they were willing to respect my choices and boundaries. I never sent it. After reading it over several times, I realized it was more for my own processing than for them. They had my number if they wanted to reach out. As days turned into weeks with no contact, my initial raw pain began to transform. I started sleeping better. Food regained its taste. I laughed at Tyler's jokes without the laughter catching in my throat. The offer on the house was accepted, and the whirlwind of inspections, paperwork, and planning provided welcome distraction. At work, my focus and drive paid off with new client acquisitions and recognition from senior management. "Whatever fire has been lit under you, keep it burning," my boss commented, after I landed the Hendrickson account that the firm had been pursuing for years. Tyler and I settled into a deeper rhythm in our relationship. He introduced me to his parents, Frank and Helen, who welcomed me with genuine warmth. Sunday dinners at their modest home became a healing ritual, showing me what family support could look like. Frank always asked about my work with real interest, while Helen shared family recipes and never once made me feel inadequate for my limited cooking skills. "You are good for our son," Helen told me one evening as we washed dishes together. "We have not seen him this happy in years." "He is good for me, too," I replied, realizing how profoundly true that was. As closing day on the house approached, Tyler and I spent weekends shopping for furniture and debating paint colors. These ordinary activities felt extraordinary to me, evidence of a normal life taking shape despite the family rupture. Our friends helped us move in on a sunny Saturday in June, 3 months after the confrontation with my parents. As I unpacked boxes in what would become our home office, I came across framed photos of my family from happier times. I had packed them automatically, not ready to erase that part of my history despite everything. After a moment's hesitation, I placed a single photo on the bookshelf, a snapshot from my high school graduation with my parents and brother. The rest I stored in the closet, not discarded, but not displayed either. It felt like the right balance, acknowledging my past without letting it dominate my present. That night, after our friends had left and Tyler had fallen asleep, I stood in our new kitchen, marveling at the quiet and the sense of ownership. This space was ours, created without obligation or guilt. For the first time in years, possibly since childhood, I felt truly free. The realization brought tears, but they were different from the ones I had shed in recent months. These were tears of release, of possibilities, of a future unencumbered by unhealthy expectations. As I climbed into bed beside Tyler, I whispered a thank you to the universe for bringing me to this moment, for the painful growth that had ultimately led to peace. I did not know then that the fragile tranquility I had found was about to be shattered by a single text message. Exactly 3 months and 2 days after the disastrous dinner, my phone buzzed with a text notification. I was in a meeting at work presenting campaign metrics to clients, so I did not check it until afterward. When I finally glanced at my phone in the hallway, my blood ran cold. The message was from my father. Why have not you paid the mortgage? We are 2 months behind now, and getting foreclosure warnings. No hello, no acknowledgement of our estrangement, not even a question about my well-being, just an accusation, an implicit demand for money. I stared at the screen, unable to process the audacity of the message. My hands shook so badly I had to lean against the wall for support. A colleague passing by noticed my distress. "Jessica, are you okay? You look like you have seen a ghost." "Just family stuff," I managed to reply. "I need a minute." I retreated to the empty conference room and sank into a chair, trying to regulate my breathing as Dr. Marshall had taught me. In through the nose for 4 counts, hold for 7, out through the mouth for 8. The simple exercise helped calm my racing heart enough to think more clearly. The entitlement in my father's message was staggering. After telling me to get out and never come back, after my mother's declaration that I was no longer their daughter, they still expected me to support them financially. It was as if the confrontation had never happened, as if their rejection had come with a silent asterisk, "except for your money, that we still want." I called Tyler, needing to hear his voice before I responded to the text. "Can you believe this?" I asked after reading him the message. "Unfortunately, yes," he replied with a sigh. "Based on everything you have told me about them, this is exactly on brand." What should I do? Ignore it? Tell them off? I am so angry I can barely see straight. Why not talk to Dr. Marshall before responding? Your next session is tomorrow, right? As always, Tyler's suggestion was sensible. I agreed to wait, though it took tremendous restraint not to fire back an immediate response. Throughout the rest of the workday, I found myself composing and discarding potential replies in my head, each more scathing than the last. Dr. Marshall listened calmly as I ranted about the text during our session the following afternoon. She let me express my anger and hurt fully before offering her perspective. "This message reveals a great deal about your parents' mindset," she noted. "They genuinely do not seem to connect their behavior toward you with your decision to stop financial support. In their worldview, your obligation to them exists independently of how they treat you. So what do I do? Just keep paying for the rest of my life, no matter what they say or do to me?" She shook her head. "Not at all. I think this is an opportunity to clearly communicate your boundary. A simple, non-emotional response that connects their actions to the consequence." Together, we crafted a reply that was neither angry nor apologetic. "I thought I was not welcome anymore. You told me to get out and never come back, and Mom said I was no longer your daughter if I left. I respected your wishes." The message was sent from Dr. Marshall's office. Before I even reached the parking lot, my phone exploded with notifications. Multiple texts from both parents appeared in rapid succession. From Dad, "You know we did not mean that. How could you let us lose our home over a little argument?" From Mom, "This is how you treat family. We raised you better than this. Call us immediately." From Dad again, "Your mother is in tears. I hope you are happy with yourself." The guilt tactics were so predictable I almost laughed, though there was no humor in the situation. Instead of responding to the barrage, I silenced my phone and drove home, determined not to engage further until I had processed my feelings. Tyler and I discussed the situation over dinner that night. "They are panicking because their meal ticket is gone," he observed. "Notice how there is no apology, just accusations and demands." I know, I sighed, pushing pasta around my plate without appetite. Part of me still feels guilty, though. What if they really do lose the house? Then they lose a house they could not afford without exploiting their daughter. Tyler replied, his tone gentle but firm. "That is not on you, Jess." The next morning, I woke to find a voice message from my brother Michael. His words slurred as though he had been drinking. "Way to go, sis. Mom and Dad might be homeless because of you. Real classy. Always thought you were better than us, and now you are proving it." That hurt more than my parents' messages. Michael and I had never been close, but his willingness to pile on without knowing the full story stung deeply. On Dr. Marshall's advice, I temporarily blocked all their numbers to give myself space to think. You do not need to make any permanent decisions right now, she counseled. Just create some breathing room. That breathing room lasted exactly 4 days until Saturday morning, when Tyler and I were enjoying coffee on our new patio furniture. The doorbell rang, and through the front window I could see my parents standing on the porch. "Oh my God," I whispered, clutching Tyler's arm. "They are here. How did they even find our address?" "Probably property records," Tyler said grimly. "They are public. Do you want me to ask them to leave?" I considered it for a moment, then shook my head. "Number, I need to face them. But stay with me, please." Tuller squeezed me hand. "Always." I opened the door to find my mother's tear-streaked face and my father's thunderous expression. They pushed past me into the foyer without waiting for an invitation. "So this is why you abandoned us," my father said, gesturing around at our new home. "Pretty fancy place. Obviously you can afford this, but not to help your own parents." "You need to leave," Tyler said, his voice calm but authoritative, as he moved to stand beside me. "You cannot just show up unannounced and make accusations." "This is between family," my father shot back. "You stay out of it." "Tyler is family to me," I interjected, finding my voice at last. "And he lives here too. This is our home, and you came uninvited." "We would not have had to come uninvited if you had returned our calls," my mother cried. "Do you have any idea what you have put us through? The bank called yesterday about foreclosure proceedings." The familiar guilt began to rise in my chest, but I pushed it down, remembering Dr. Marshall's words about healthy boundaries. "I am sorry you are in this situation," I said carefully, "but you made it clear I was no longer welcome in your lives. You cannot disown me one day and expect my financial support the next." "We were upset," my father shouted. "Parents say things they do not mean when they are angry. Any normal daughter would understand that." "And any normal parents would apologize when they cool down," I countered. "It has been 3 months, and the first contact I got from you was a demand for money." My mother collapsed onto our bench by the door, sobbing dramatically. "We are going to lose everything," she wailed. "After 30 years in that house, we will be out on the street. Is that what you want?" Tyler remained a steady presence beside me, his hand on the small of my back, providing silent support as I found the strength to say what needed to be said. "What I want is to be treated with respect," I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. "For 5 years I have supported you financially while receiving nothing but criticism in return. You belittled my career, dismissed my relationship, and then threw me out when I finally wanted something for myself." "You make it sound so one-sided," my father scoffed. "We gave you life, raised you, put food on the table." "That is what parents are supposed to do," I exclaimed, years of repressed feelings finally breaking through. "It was your choice to have children, not mine to be born. That does not entitle you to control my adult life or drain my bank account forever." The outburst left a ringing silence in its wake. My parents stared at me as though I had grown a second head. In their worldview, what I had just expressed was heresy of the highest order. "I do not even recognize you anymore," my mother finally whispered. "What happened to our sweet, helpful daughter?" "She grew up," I answered simply. "She realized she deserves better than conditional love." My father's face darkened again. "So, that is it. You are just going to let us lose everything." "The choice is not that simple, and you know it," I replied. "You are using the house as emotional blackmail, just like you have used my love for you all these years." With that, I opened the front door, a clear indication that the conversation was over. "I think you should leave now. I need time to think, and showing up like this has not helped your case." To my surprise, they actually complied, though not without parting shots. "Think about what family really means, Jessica," my mother said tearfully as she passed. My father did not even look at me, muttering to Tyler instead, "Hope you know what you are getting into with this one. Turns out she abandons people when it gets tough." As the door closed behind them, I collapsed against Tyler, emotionally drained but also strangely empowered. For the first time ever, I had stood my ground with my parents without backing down or giving in to guilt. The victory felt bittersweet, but necessary. "I am proud of you," Tyler murmured into my hair as he held me. "That took incredible courage." I nodded against his chest, unable to speak through the knot of emotions in my throat. I had no idea what would happen next with my family, but I knew with absolute certainty that things could never go back to the way they had been before. For better or worse, a fundamental shift had occurred, and there was no reversing it. The week following my parents' surprise visit passed without further contact from them. I vacillated between relief at the respite and anxiety about the foreclosure they had mentioned. Despite everything, the thought of them losing their home because of my decision weighed heavily on me. After much reflection and several conversations with both Tyler and Dr. Marshall, I came to a decision. I would offer financial help, but with clear conditions attached. This would be assistance on my terms, not the blank check they had come to expect. I drafted an email outlining my terms. I would help them refinance the mortgage to something more manageable given their actual income, but I would not resume making payments for them. Additionally, any financial assistance would be contingent upon their participation in family therapy sessions. It was time to address the dysfunctional patterns that had dominated our relationship for years. "Do you think they will agree?" Tyler asked, as he read over the email before I sent it. "Honestly, I doubt it," I admitted. "But this is the only way forward I can live with. The ball will be in their court." After sending the email, I felt a sense of peace, regardless of how they might respond. I had offered help without sacrificing my self-respect, and that represented genuine progress in my journey. While waiting for a response from my parents, life continued to evolve in positive ways. Tyler's family became an increasingly important part of my support system. His mother, Helen, invited me for lunch one Saturday, while Tyler helped his father with a home improvement project. "I hope you do not mind me saying this," Helen said as we prepared a salad together, "but I think you are handling a very difficult situation with remarkable grace." "It does not feel graceful from the inside," I confessed. "Most days I feel like I am just stumbling through." "That is what grace is," she replied with a warm smile. "Moving forward with dignity, even when the path is unclear." Her words stayed with me, a reminder that strength often looks different than we imagine. It was not about having all the answers or never feeling hurt. It was about continuing to act with integrity despite the pain. At work, my newfound assertiveness translated into professional growth. When a senior marketing director position opened unexpectedly, I applied despite traditionally lacking the years of experience typically required. To my surprise and delight, I was selected after a competitive interview process. "Your performance over the past quarter has been exceptional," my boss explained when offering me the position. "But more importantly, you have demonstrated an ability to handle difficult situations with maturity and clear boundaries. Those are leadership qualities we value." The irony was not lost on me that the very skills I had developed through my family conflict were now advancing my career. Sometimes growth comes from the most painful experiences. 2 weeks after sending my email, I received an unexpected call from my brother Michael. I almost declined it, assuming he was calling to berate me again on our parents' behalf, but something prompted me to answer. "Jessica." His voice sounded different, less hostile than in his previous message. "Do you have a minute to talk?" "I am listening," I replied cautiously. "I want to apologize for that voicemail I left," he said, surprising me completely. "I was drunk and just repeating what Mom and Dad told me without knowing the whole story." "And you know the whole story now?" I asked. "Some of it," he admitted. "Enough to realize they have not been straight with me about what happened. They made it sound like you just abandoned them out of nowhere." I sighed, unsurprised by this characterization. That is not exactly how it went down. Yeah, I figured that out when I asked some questions and they got super defensive. There was a pause before he continued. They have always treated you differently than me, you know. I see that now. His acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you for saying that. It means a lot. Michael went on to reveal that he had moved out of our parents' basement and gotten a full-time job at a restaurant where he had been bartending. He was sharing an apartment with friends and experiencing for the first time what it meant to be fully responsible for himself. It is harder than I thought, he admitted. Makes me realize how much you have been carrying all these years. Before ending the call, Michael mentioned that our parents had received my email but were still processing it. Between us, he added, they are running out of options. The foreclosure notice is real, and they do not have anywhere else to go. This information gave me time to prepare emotionally for their eventual response. When it came 3 days later in the form of a terse text message from my father, we need to talk about your proposal. Dinner at our house Sunday, 6 p.m. I felt ready to face whatever came next. Tyler offered to accompany me, but I decided this was a conversation I needed to have alone. I will keep my phone on and call you if I need backup, I promised him. The house looked shabbier than I remembered as I pulled into the driveway Sunday evening. The lawn needed mowing, and several roof shingles were visibly missing. These signs of neglect reflected the precariousness of my parents' situation more eloquently than words could have. My mother answered the door with a stiff greeting, her eyes red-rimmed from crying, or lack of sleep, or both. My father waited in the living room, standing awkwardly as though unsure whether to offer a hug or a handshake. We settled for uncomfortable nods before moving to the dining room. Dinner was a silent, tense affair. The food was minimal and hastily prepared, so unlike my mother's usually elaborate Sunday meals. Only after plates were cleared did my father finally address the reason for our meeting. We have thought about your email, he began formally. The refinancing help would be appreciated. The word seemed difficult for him to pronounce. And the other condition I asked, referring to the family therapy requirement. My mother's lips thinned with disapproval. We do not see why that is necessary. Families disagree sometimes. It does not mean we need some stranger telling us how to talk to each other. That is my condition, I replied steadily. I am not just offering financial help. I am offering a chance for us to heal the relationship, but that can only happen with professional guidance. And if we refuse, my father challenged, then I will still help you find resources for housing assistance, but I will not be financially involved. I answered, my voice gentle but firm. This is not an ultimatum, it is a boundary. My parents exchanged a long look, having one of those silent conversations long married couples, perfect over the years. Finally, my father sighed heavily. Fine, we will try your therapy idea, but I am not promising anything will change. It was as much of a concession as I was likely to get. Thank you. I will set up an appointment with Dr. Wilson. She specializes in family dynamics. The first therapy session the following week was predictably difficult. Dr. Wilson, a serene woman with silver-streaked hair and penetrating eyes, established ground rules for our discussions that my father immediately tested with interruptions and dismissive comments. Mr. Parker, she said calmly, after his third interruption of my attempt to express my feelings, each person here deserves the courtesy of being heard. Would you want Jessica to interrupt you when it is your turn to speak? His grudging compliance allowed the session to proceed, though progress was minimal. My mother spent most of the time dabbing at tears, without actually engaging with the difficult topics Dr. Wilson raised. When asked directly about her expectations of me as an adult daughter, she retreated into vague platitudes about family loyalty. What does family loyalty look like to you, specifically, Barbara? Dr. Wilson pressed. Being there for each other, my mother replied. not abandoning ship when things get hard. And has that loyalty been reciprocal in your family? The therapist inquired, looking between my parents and me. The uncomfortable silence that followed spoke volumes. By the end of the session, only one concrete agreement had been reached: we would continue meeting weekly. It was a small step, but Dr. Wilson assured me privately that even reluctant participation could eventually lead to meaningful change. True to my word, I helped my parents explore refinancing options with a financial advisor I trusted. Their situation was worse than I had realized, with multiple maxed out credit cards in addition to the mortgage issue. Creating a sustainable plan required difficult conversations about their spending habits and my father's failing business. It might be time to consider closing the business and finding employment elsewhere, the advisor suggested gently. My father bristled at first, but eventually acknowledged the reality of the numbers in front of him. His construction supply company had been losing money for years, sustained only by my contributions and accumulating debt. These financial discussions paralleled our ongoing therapy sessions, where each week seemed to bring incremental progress. By the third session, my father managed to admit, albeit grudgingly, that he might have taken my support for granted. "I guess I got used to you handling things," he conceded. It was easier not to question it. My mother found it harder to acknowledge her role in the dynamic. Her identity was so wrapped up in being the family matriarch that any suggestion of dysfunction threatened her self-image. It was during our fifth session that Dr. Wilson finally broke through her defenses. "Barbara," she asked gently when Jessica was covering the mortgage and helping with Robert's business, "how did you show your appreciation?" My mother looked genuinely confused. She knew we were grateful. "Did she?" Dr. Wilson turned to me. "Jessica, did you feel appreciated for your contributions?" "No," I answered honestly. "I felt like it was just expected. Like I would be a bad daughter if I did not help, but not a good daughter if I did. It was just baseline." The realization visibly struck my mother. For perhaps the first time, she saw our relationship from my perspective, and the view was clearly unsettling. These moments of insight, though painful, were the building blocks of a new family dynamic. We were not healing overnight, but we were finally acknowledging the wounds that had festered for years beneath the surface of our interactions. Outside of therapy, I maintained careful boundaries while still offering appropriate support. I helped my father update his resume and connect with former industry colleagues who might have job leads. I assisted my mother in researching part-time work that would supplement their income without overtaxing her. These practical forms of help felt different from the financial support I had previously provided. They were empowering rather than enabling, teaching them to fish, rather than simply providing the meal. Michael became an unexpected ally in this family transformation. Having established his own independence, he began attending some of the therapy sessions voluntarily, offering perspectives that sometimes helped bridge the communication gap between me and our parents. Mom and Dad come from a generation where kids were supposed to take care of their parents no matter what, he observed during one particularly productive session. But they never prepared us for that role, or acknowledged the sacrifice it requires. His insight helped our parents see the unfairness of their unspoken expectations without feeling directly attacked by me. Slowly, the family narrative began to shift from one of entitlement to one of mutual respect and appreciation. 6 months after the explosive dinner that had altered our family forever, I sat across from my mother at a small cafe near her new workplace. She had recently started as an office manager for a local dental practice, her first full-time job in years. The position seemed to have awakened something in her, a sense of competence and independence that had long been dormant. "The doctor says I have a knack for keeping the scheduling system organized," she told me, a hint of pride in her voice that I rarely heard before. "Apparently, the last manager made a mess of things." "That does not surprise me," I replied sincerely. "You have always been good at organizing." This simple exchange, ordinary as it might seem, represented a profound shift in our relationship. We were talking as adults, sharing genuine aspects of our lives, without the undercurrent of obligation and resentment that had previously defined our interactions. My father, too, had undergone changes, though his transformation was less dramatic. After closing his failing business, he had found work as a project manager for a larger construction company. The regular paycheck and reduced stress had improved his disposition considerably. He no longer carried the burden of a failing enterprise on his shoulders, and consequently had less need to displace that frustration onto me. With Dr. Wilson's guidance, we had worked out a new financial arrangement. Instead of directly paying their mortgage, I had helped them refinance to a more affordable 30-year fixed-rate mortgage that they could manage with their combined incomes. The process required them to take responsibility for their financial situation while still receiving appropriate support from me. My brother Michael continued to surprise me with his growth. Now working full-time and taking night classes to complete his associate's degree, he had developed a new appreciation for responsibility and independence. "I get now why you were always so stressed," he admitted during one of our newly established monthly sibling dinners. "Carrying everything yourself is exhausting." Tyler had integrated into family gatherings with cautious optimism. My parents' initial hostility had gradually given way to grudging acceptance, and eventually to genuine appreciation for his stabilizing presence in my life. Their shift in attitude culminated in their response to our engagement, which Tyler proposed during a weekend trip to the mountains 6 months after our move to Riverside. "We are getting married," I announced during a therapy session, deciding this was the safest space to share our news. My mother's eyes immediately filled with tears, but for once they appeared to be tears of joy rather than manipulation. "That is wonderful news," she said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "Tyler is a good man." My father cleared his throat, clearly emotional, though trying to hide it. "He will make a fine husband," he acknowledged. "He obviously cares for you very much." Their genuine happiness for this milestone in my life felt like a gift, one I had not dared hope for during the darkest days of our estrangement. Planning the wedding became an unexpected avenue for healing. My mother, when invited to help with specific tasks, rather than take control, proved to be a thoughtful and supportive sounding board. During a lunch to discuss floral arrangements, she surprised me with an unprompted apology. "I have not been the mother you deserved," she said quietly, her eyes fixed on her plate. "I see that now. I was so caught up in my own needs that I could not see yours." The acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you for saying that, Mom. It means a lot." Dr. Wilson says, "Recognition is the first step," she continued. "I am trying to do better. To see you as your own person, not just an extension of me or a solution to my problems." This conversation marked a turning point in our relationship. The careful distance I had maintained began to feel less necessary as my mother demonstrated consistent respect for my boundaries. Small gestures accumulated over time, rebuilding trust that had been severely damaged. My father's journey was slower, but no less significant. During a weekend when he helped Tyler install shelving in our garage, he made his own form of amends. "I was wrong to say those things to you," he admitted gruffly, focusing intently on the level in his hands rather than meeting my eyes. "About being ungrateful. About getting out." A father should never say that to his daughter, no matter how angry he is. I stood silently, recognizing the difficulty of this confession for a man who rarely acknowledged mistakes. "You have always been a good daughter," he continued. "Better than we deserved, probably. I want you to know, I see that now." Tyler, witnessing this exchange, quietly excused himself to give us privacy, a gesture my father acknowledged with a grateful nod. "Thank you, Dad," I replied, simply understanding that for him, these few sentences represented a monumental effort. As wedding preparations progressed, I found myself reflecting often on the journey of the past year. From the devastating family dinner to the text message about the mortgage, from confrontation to tentative reconciliation, it had been a path of painful growth for all of us. Dr. Marshall, in our now monthly individual sessions, helped me process these changes. "What would you say is the most important lesson you have learned?" she asked during one session. I considered the question carefully. That love without respect is not really love at all, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and others is to set firm boundaries. "And how has that knowledge changed you?" she prompted. "I no longer feel guilty for having my own life," I realized aloud. "I can love my family without being responsible for their happiness or financial security. And, strangely enough, since I stopped trying to fix everything for them, they have started fixing things for themselves." This hard-won wisdom guided my interactions, not only with my family, but in all areas of my life. At work, I became more comfortable declining projects that would overwhelm my schedule. In friendships, I learned to express my needs rather than always prioritizing others. And with Tyler, I cultivated a relationship built on mutual support rather than one-sided sacrifice. The wedding day arrived on a perfect June afternoon, exactly 1 year after the confrontation that had initially torn my family apart. As I prepared in a room at the venue, my mother helped adjust my veil with uncharacteristic gentleness. "You look beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I am so proud of the woman you have become." "Even though I am not the daughter you expected," I asked, recalling her words from months ago. "Because you are exactly the daughter you were meant to be," she replied. "Strong, independent, and brave enough to show us where we went wrong." When my father walked me down the aisle, his hand trembling slightly against mine, I felt the weight of our shared history alongside the promise of a healthier future. The journey had been painful but necessary, transforming not just my relationship with my parents, but my understanding of myself. During the reception, surrounded by friends and family from both sides, I took a moment to observe the scene with wonder. Tyler's parents chatted amicably with mine, finding common ground despite their different backgrounds. Michael was deep in conversation with Tyler's sister, their laughter carrying across the room. And Tyler himself watched me with eyes full of love, secure in the knowledge that we had built our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect. In that moment, I realized that the text message about the mortgage, infuriating as it had been at the time, had ultimately been a gift. It had forced a confrontation that might otherwise have been avoided indefinitely, allowing us to finally address the dysfunction that had plagued our family for years. As Tyler and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I found myself reflecting on what I would tell others facing similar family struggles. The path to healthy relationships is rarely smooth, and sometimes requires painful separation before reconciliation becomes possible. Setting boundaries is not selfish, but necessary for authentic connection. And most importantly, love that demands self-sacrifice without reciprocity is not love at all, but exploitation dressed in family loyalty. I had paid a high price, both financially and emotionally, to learn these lessons. But standing beside my husband, looking toward our future with optimism, and surrounded by a family transformed by honesty and respect, I knew the cost had been worth it. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones? Do you think family relationships should be unconditional, or is mutual respect necessary? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more journeys of personal growth and family healing. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes walking away is the first step toward building something better.